of the of your research paper, right? Where we are going to ask you to document those things. So if you write a paper and you know, have some source for something, then, and it's maybe just not like kind of common knowledge or something that not everybody would know, well, then we're going to ask you to tell us where you got that from. Where did you learn that from? Is that something, and we're going to ask you even tell us what page it was on maybe, or at least what book it came from. So it's not, you can't just, it's not just a free-for-all. You just kind of pontificate from your own knowledge, but in fact you document it. That's something that we do, and something that's the way academia and academics moves forward, is by building upon what other people have done, and then of course giving them credit along the way, and then moving forward. We talked about the ways that we learn, rationalism versus empiricism, and those rationalism we learn through language, empiricism we learn through personal experience, let's say hands-on kind of experimentation, or actually experiencing something personally. And yeah, I think basically we would probably say that we learn things both ways. And I use the example, but I'd like for you to think about it though for the test, about a kind of a purely empirical world as opposed to a purely rational world where we only learn through language, and the other one we only learn through personal experience, and what kind of world that would be like. And it would be really quite different than maybe what we think about today, because we actually learn both ways. Most of us do. I hope everyone does. I have some friends who I think only learn through what they hear from other people, or what they read on Facebook, right? Or what their meme, or a certain meme says, or I see people posting stuff all the time on social media that are just things they just read the headline of, having read the whole article that's attached to it. No, that's, and they think it's true. Okay. What else here? All right, axiology, values. What do we value? Are there any values better than other values? Any superior set of values, you know, that maybe some part of the world or culture could maybe impose upon the other part of the world because their values are superior? Let's see here. Yeah, and then where do we place our value? Like I used this example of the scripture that says, where your treasure is, there also is your heart. And so we could maybe translate that as saying treasure is like money, and or your time, right? Or your efforts, or where your thoughts are, even on a lesser level. And wherever your heart, wherever that is, wherever you're placing your emotional energy, your financial energy, whatever, that's where your heart is. It's easy to tell maybe where someone places value based on what they do, how they live. So, and this would be also true in the way that we would maybe decide what something is worth to us financially. I'm going to talk something about artwork here. Maybe you see paintings by, I don't know, by Monet, or by, oh, let's go by Da Vinci or something like this, and you think, yeah, well, I don't really like those very much, but I do like some of these paintings that hang in the PAC lobby. I'd like to have some of those in my house. Okay, so that's your judgment, and this falls also into this area of aesthetics as well. So aesthetics maybe helps us make that kind of judgment. Aesthetics is the act of judging things that are created, and then therefore maybe placing a value on that thing. So you may be willing to pay more for a piece of artwork from a student hanging in the PAC lobby than you would for a piece of artwork at a auction at Sotheby's in London or something, of some famous artist. That's just aesthetically, that's how you've judged it. So we talked about, people judge movies. Movie critics are aesthetic judges of things, and these are very relative judgments. I think I use the example of, you may see a movie that a critic told you not to go to, that wasn't worth your money or your time, but you go anyway for some reason, and you find out that you really like that movie. And the other thing you talk about with aesthetics, kind of along the same lines as ethics. And so as we, talk about values, values then come into play with ethics, because ethics is a combination of morality and then how you conduct yourself in life. So not only do you know the rules, but rules, not only do you know all the answers on the ethics final, but you actually live your life that way. And that is living ethically. You know the morality of it, you conduct yourself in accordance with that morality, and that's ethics then. Talked a little bit about social and political philosophy, and different kind of a spectrum of ideas, maybe from the most repressive and most controlling, some kind of a fascist dictatorship or communism on one end, and then on the other end, the far other end, would be anarchy, and where there's no government, there's no centralized, or there's no centralized control, anarchy where just there are no rules. And then there's all this, of course, the bigger area in between those two, and we live, thankfully, we live somewhere in the middle there between those two things. But we talked about some different types of, at least one class we did. If not, you can think about that, different types of government that operate somewhere between anarchy and communism, let's say, or anarchy and fascism. And yes, there's a pretty broad swath of different types of governments and economies and societies that fit into that area. All right, let's talk about real quickly the pre-Socratics, but I'm not going to go through each one, but talk about kind of where they came from, as far as, I don't know, philosophically, religiously, where they came from, theocentrism. We talked about anthropomorphism already, but that was a part of this as well. These first three philosophers come from the same area, which is today Turkey. There, it's like on the Ionian coastline that faces towards Italy, towards Greece, but it's modern day Turkey. Miletus is this port city there, and we have Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes, and they're part of this Milesian school of philosophers, although they had different ideas. Thales thought water was the ultimate element. Anaximander thought there must be a fifth element, and Anaximenes thought that it was air, but gave us some other information that would be interesting and maybe still applies today. But all of this whole idea of what does the world come down to? And they're known as, I didn't tell any class this, but this year, but this type of thinking, I talked about, a cosmology, this kind of way they study the universe, the world, but at least two out of the three, and really maybe three out of the three, were what we call materialists. And when we say materialism in philosophy, we don't mean you've got to have a certain pair of jeans or a certain clothing brand, but we mean that they kind of limited themselves not to anything to do with the spiritual world, but they were only looking at the physical, the material stuff of the universe. I use that term. And what was the ultimate stuff of the universe? What did it all break down to? We talked about that not being such an odd idea, that there are still people today who are scientists who are looking into what's the world made of? Atoms and quark and string theory, and I don't know. If I check on it, there's probably some other ideas. that have gone further than that, but that's kind of where we are. And we just keep asking the question again and again, well, what's that made of? And then we get that, and we go, well, what's that made of? And we can kind of keep going that way. Okay, so why philosophy began in Greece, some ideas about that. Then we talked about Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes. Please know those two things from Anaximenes, he's the third of those three, about the priority of observation, and it's all really about simplicity in a way. It's all about, let's just kind of keep things simple. Let's not make up stuff that we can't see and can't really comprehend. We're materialists, right? Let's deal with the world as we can observe it and experience it. And then the other part of this was that this, basically the simpler explanation is probably the correct one, that we don't need to complicate. Doesn't mean that the answer is not complicated. It doesn't mean that there are not entities that we cannot observe that are playing a role. But let's start with the simplicity first. Let's prefer the theory that has fewer entities. And that was the second part of his, I think I call these kind of primitive scientific axioms, although I don't think that they're that far off from what we kind of, at least where we start in science today. Okay, Pythagoras, maybe a little about him already and all of his crazy rules and how people got reincarnated unless they followed all these crazy rules. And if they didn't, they'd be reincarnated as a bean, B-E-A-N, or as a animal, or as a human. So if you tell me on the test that they could be reincarnated as a plant, that's pretty broad. But a bean, yes. If they're reincarnated as a human, yes. As an animal, yes. So they were vegetarians. That's not so odd for religion, but they couldn't eat the beans either because, well, it might be a human. And then all the other crazy rules they had that I mentioned. But of course, we know about them through this theorem and, well, rational order to the world through numbers, but there's also irrational numbers, and this whole idea really makes this cult that he had fall apart. And I think anyone who follows all these rules, I would think we can safely call that a cult of some sort. They willingly follow. Okay, I think only two more. Parmenides is the one who's a metaphysicist who talks about the possibilities of things that are, if things exist or not. He had the idea of it is not, it is, and it is not. Those are the three possibilities. It is not, and somehow maybe it is and it is not simultaneously. Well, he eliminates, he uses his argument by elimination, please know that term, and kind of discusses each one and eliminates the third one, the second one, and is left with the idea of it is. If we can think or speak of it, if we can give it qualities and characteristics and all that, then it is. It comes into existence somehow, and it is something. I use example of Santa Claus, or we could talk about unicorns the same way, or we could talk about all kinds of things that we know about and we maybe have seen pictures of, not photos maybe, but not real photos, but drawings of, and we can talk about them and what they do. And the unicorns have wings. Some people might say yes and no, and a horn, or are they always white? And they seem to be always white. And well, we know a lot of things about unicorns, but they have an existence in some way because we were able to talk about them. We're able to literally give them existence by the use of language, by the use of words, and describing them in some way. They come to life. Okay. Last one, Empedocles. And he believes in the four elements, but he also believes that there are those two forces at work, love and strife. Love brings those elements together to make things, to make new things, and strife is this force of destruction that tears down those unities that love brought together. And there's kind of this constant struggle in the universe, not among the elements. The elements don't struggle with each other, but the with love and strife acting upon the elements. But let me see. I think it's the last thing I said about those pre-Socratics, I believe. I think I talked just briefly about the a few of the sophists, about Protagoras and his idea of each individual person is the measure of all things. There is no standard by which the whole world can judge certain things. Each individual man is the judge. And he has this quote, homo mensura, man is the measure. And he's someone who actually has a recorded dialogue that Plato records of him talking to Socrates. And Socrates, I haven't told you yet, really believes in absolutes, that there are absolutes. And so he and Protagoras really don't see eye to eye on this idea. Okay, and I think I talked about a couple of other sophists, Callicles and Critias, about morality and how rulers manipulate people with morality. I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions? No one spoke up at all? Anyone have anything? I'll tell you, the test will be most of it will be multiple choice, and then there'll be some short answer questions, maybe 5 or 10 short answer questions at the end. So, you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's objective in that sense. The short answer questions will be objective answers too. I'm not going to ask you to write an essay and support your idea with. It's not going to be like that. It's just going to be factual information. That's the thing about philosophy, at least teaching it, is that I can't really. You may have an opinion about certain things, even about these people or about some philosophical idea, but it's very difficult to grade your opinion because your opinion's your opinion. And it'd be difficult to put a value on it that would be fair. So really, the only thing I can test you over or quiz you over are about what other people said and what their ideas were. So it becomes pretty objective, kind of. Although there's not much objective about the course in the field of study of philosophy, the only way really to grade at this level at least is to do it objectively. So anyway, it should be pretty straightforward. Are there any questions? If not,
are you reading off of like a list of things that we're supposed to know?
No, I'm just going through my notes that I have that I lectured from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I don't have a study guide or anything like that. It's just I'm just flipping through my spiral here.
Okay.
So what should we study? What do you suggest we like study off of? Should we just go back and read the book, or like?
Well, the book would help, but the main thing I think for most of the class would be from your notes you've taken during the lecture. That'd be the main thing.
Okay.
Because most of these things, but there are a lot of, especially in chapter 1 of the book. But please understand the test is not over the book. Although the book and the lecture overlap, there won't be any questions that specifically talk about things in the book. Like there won't be any questions about Descartes on this test, although the book talked about Descartes. So it's just over what I've talked about in class. Good. Any other questions? I can't see the. Oh, we're good. Any other questions? Okay. So group A, I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll do this, and I'll have 2 different tests. So group B will see something a little bit different than group A, but same format really. And I guess if you have any other questions, you can just email me, and if I check, I'll be checking it today. Email me before the day is over, though, before class is over, because I probably won't check it later on. I'll be working on putting the test together. So, okay, all right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and the rest of it I'll see Friday. Okay, bye.